My name is Ryan Penagos, aka Agent M, and I'm so glad that you are joining us here on a Friday night to watch X-Men the animated series. But I can't do it alone. I'm thankfully
All
joined
you
by
drinks. All
Marvel's M.O.D.O.K
there's a mall, babe. Look, chili
showrunner
fries.
Jordan.
Oh,
Hey, Jordan.
hello, Ryan.
Hi.
Hello, Ryan. I was just
Uh,
cleaning up.
yes, this is Jordan Blum, who is the executive producer and showrunner for Marvel's M.O.D.O.K show. You know, a couple things about animation, and it's real fun to have you here for this.
Thank you for having me back, sort of. But it's good to be here. I'm ready to talk about X-Men and watch some
Yeah.
of my
So
favorite
we're,
show
we're
of all
just
time.
like Hamilton. We did like a short off Broadway run on Instagram Live to test this out. And here we are on the main stage, joined by all the fans on Facebook and YouTube and wherever they are. So this is good. Jordan, you're a huge X-Men fan.
Uh, what gave you that idea?
Do you remember where you were or like any first memories of X-Men the animated series?
Yeah, I remember, that up until that point, I had just taped Pride of the X-Men off TV. That was the only animated X-Men I had. I was hungry for more, and I remember seeing an ad for it on Fox and seeing, Wolverine pop his claws for the first time. And I had immediately like went out, had my mom buy a bunch of VHS tapes, and I just started taping them every weekend and I was addicted immediately. Kind of hit me
Sure.
right in that at the perfect point where we had kind of coming out of that relaunch with Jim Lee and
Yeah.
suddenly it was just on TV.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible to think of, that time, 1992, where we were, what it was like then and now. So we're going to get into a lot of that stuff. We're going to talk about our thoughts and favorite X-Men stuff as we go through it. A couple things off the top. This is a watch along, so we want everybody who is joining us to get yourselves ready. Get your Disney Plus loaded up. Get to the screen for episode 1, which is Night of the Sentinels, part 1. We're going to be doing part 1 and part 2 with a little pause in between so we can take your questions, talk a little bit about some extra things for the episode. And so when episode 1 ends on Disney Plus, make sure you don't let it go right into the next episode. We're going to pause, come back, do that whole thing.
I have way
What
more
else?
prop comedy to get through before we can really
Oh
start.
boy.
Okay, just kidding.
For
But
better
hey, before we
or
start, I would like
worse.
to cheers you. Um,
Yeah,
I happen to have a M.O.D.O.K mug
as do
because I'm
I.
here to selflessly promote or selfishly promote M.O.D.O.K show. I know you're a big M.O.D.O.K guy, so cheers on this Friday
Cheers.
before we begin. Cheers.
I've got my two Modocs behind me. Ooh, that's a great spinoff. My two Modocs. Just put that in the hopper. See if you can
I'm
use
ready to
that
go.
for anything else you got going on.
Let's
Yeah,
let's get a spin-off going before the first show even airs.
yeah. I mean, isn't that the way we want to do it?
Of course.
What else? I want to make sure everything else before we get this thing going. Of course, we've got folks on the other side who are gathering your questions and your thoughts and stuff, and they'll be feeding them to us. So please, if you have X-Men questions, I got one on Instagram that we're going to address a little bit later in the episode, and I feel good. I feel ready to do
It
this.
better
I
not
brought
be a Gambit question. I feel like the last time we talked about Gambit, the Gambit defenders came out big time. I think you and I both feel Gambit's the creep of the show. But anyway, we'll get into that
yeah.
later. I don't want to stir
Sure,
up
Gambit's
controversy
hot
too early.
garbage. We're
Yeah.
establishing that right now. Of course, that won't get us any comments or questions or anything to delve into that even
No.
further. But I did
Oh, and also how
bring out.
Cyclops is just a better character than Wolverine. But we don't need to get into that now.
How dare you? I brought some of my favorite books, being the same book, two copies of it, because of course I have two copies of Executioner Song. Yeah, you've got yours back there. It's all good. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna do a countdown to let everybody get ready to press play at the same time so we can kind of be in line. You have yours ready, Jordan?
I'm ready to go.
Okay, we're going to count down from 3, and then you go 3, 2, 1, go. On go, we all press play and watch season 1, episode 1, Night of the Sentinels for X-Men the animated series. Okay, 3, 2, one, go.
And here comes that sweet, sweet theme song. One
Yeah.
of the
And
best.
we're not streaming the show. Just if anybody is unsure about that, we're not playing the episode.
Yeah.
We're going to watch it with you. And of course, we're not skipping the intro because, Jordan, this is one of the greatest theme songs ever.
I have a ringtone of it, I will admit. It was a lullaby I sang to my children when they were born to put them to sleep. It did not work well.
Oh, I was going to say that sounds amazing. I have a 7-month-old daughter. I think if that worked, I would use it. But well,
No,
seems like
it's too fast. But yeah, I love this opening sequence. I love, the introductions. It's so dynamic too, the way it's directed. And you get to meet every character, see them in all their glory. You get the setup of the villains, and we're in. And I think I know every frame by heart.
Sure. Of course, there's the big thing of who is that weird villain on the villain side, the one who doesn't look like anybody.
The
There's a
green
great
guy.
book by the like the pink bald head.
Yeah.
He's a mistake. In the book previously on X-Men by showrunner Eric Lewald, he says that it just was something that they just didn't catch by the animation studio, and oops, it made it into the show.
Being a Marvel nerd, I always thought he was the Hulk villain. I believe like the Gremlin or something like some
Gremlin.
Silver Age Hulk villain.
Yeah, yeah. There's
And
that was speculation for a long time.
okay, so I wasn't
Yeah,
completely off, but I was absolutely wrong. So here,
yeah.
I think we talked a little about this before, but having Jubilee be the entry character was great. She was, uh, you know, before that it was Kitty Pryde, who was that character in Pride the X-Men, and here we're in the '90s. It's Jubilee, and I think always coming into the X-Men instead of starting with their origin, but actually starting with a character who's discovering their mutant abilities and then gets kind of pulled into their world is the best way in. It's the same way they did in the movies. So I thought it was just always a brilliant choice to kind of start the episode that way.
Yeah, I think it's not only Jubilee, you start with her like coming into the team, but also there's no like description of Wolverine and his backstory of Cyclops. Like all the characters are just like they've been X-Men for a while,
Hmm.
working undercover, and you're gonna figure out who they are as you go along. And I talk to so many people for everything that I do at Marvel. So many people have become fans of X-Men of Marvel because of this show, and it was just like boom in and you're gonna go along for the ride.
Yeah, it's an ensemble, and I think it's just fun to be thrown into the mix and thrown into the school and figure your way out. And it comes up later when she kind of wakes up there, but that's the best way to meet everyone. I think is to kind of discover it with Jubilee, to have an entry character like that.
Yeah.
Um,
So
Man, do
we're
I
in
miss
we're
arcades?
in the arcade. Did you say you miss arcades?
I miss arcades so much.
I miss them so much. My arcade growing up was called Time Out. It was in the Roosevelt Field shopping mall in Long Island, and it was the best. I played the X-Men arcade game. I played Aliens versus Predator. I played so many great games there. Captain America and the X-Men, Captain America and the Avengers, the Spider-Man game. You ever play
Those
the
were
the
amazing.
so good.
The one that would
But
like kind of get bigger and smaller. You played with Hawkeye and Namor, right?
yes, yes,
Okay,
yes,
yeah,
yes, and Black
love that
Hat.
game. There's a
Yes.
giant Venom. It's amazing.
Yes, yes.
Uh,
Someone else
yeah.
who finally remembers that. So a cool thing. Showrunner Eric Lewald mentioned this might be Stanley's first cameo in an animation. There, he's kind of the guy who runs the arcade, but also something else really cool, which I didn't know about until recently. There's the famous quote unquote famous line, "Does a mall babe eat chili fries?" in episode 2, which we'll get to, but Jubilee is eating chili fries while she's playing the arcade game.
Perfect. Perfect
Yeah,
setup.
right? Like
It's a setup and a
that
payoff
means
right
everything.
there. All right, here's this scumbag, Gambit. I mean, no, Gambit's great. He's a little sketchy in the show, but I kid. I enjoy Gambit. I enjoy his silly giant metal boots, even though he's supposed to be the greatest thief in the world. I enjoy his thick Cajun accent, and
He's very
I
loud
think,
power.
yeah, his love power. Also, I love him being the worst character to play in X-Men Clone Wars because he's so tall that even when you kneel, I remember you can get still killed or shot. So Gambit's useless. No, Gambit's great. Just kidding. We love
He is a
him.
great character. I think he's a
Yeah.
creep, and I he like upsets me in some ways, but I love that about him. I think he's a fantastic character.
Yeah.
Something that went by real quick on this episode is the Sentinel has like its computer, and it like sees Jubilee, but she had it has her code name in the system, even though she's just a kid. She's just Jubilation Lee. She doesn't like hasn't established that like she's Jubilee publicly yet.
Right.
I think it's
It's it's a little ahead of the curve. They're
yeah,
very well made machines, I guess.
yeah.
And also something I never really noticed until I heard it on a great X-Men podcast. Jay and Miles explain the X-Men. The Sentinels look like they're wearing like winter hats. Is that intentional? Is that a Jack Kirby thing? I don't know, but I never put it together until someone kind of pointed out on the podcast. They look like they're wearing, your very
Huh.
traditional. Was it toboggan? What do you call those?
Don't ask me. I don't know. But
Yeah.
Jack's Sentinels were smaller, right? So the
Right.
Sentinels got bigger and bigger and bigger over time. I think it was probably Neil Adams who made the Sentinels. They got that large. There was some really cool Sentinel stuff before
Yeah.
the book got canceled in the 70s. The
Yeah.
scene where Gambit is just hitting on the lady, and she's just like, "Oh my gosh, yes, you love playing cards. I must go out with you." He's so creepy.
Also, is he really buying one pack at a time? Like, if your mutant powers to charge cards, are you not just going, like kind of putting in a giant order from a distributor and just getting kind of big Costco crates of playing cards? You're really going out and buying each individual pack.
Jordan, you're
Gambit.
giving him too much credit, as if he would be that smart. It's Gambit. He's not that clever, which we see.
But I do love these Sentinels so much so.
Yeah.
Hold on.
You've got props.
Sorry, I'm
Are you
so
kidding me?
lo-fi. I'm tethered to my computer. I did buy this when it came out, which I thought
So
was
good.
amazing. This is
Yeah.
the classic little Toy Biz one, and you could put mutants in here and stuff. Um, but I always think, as far as when you're going to introduce the X-Men, I think the Sentinels are the best villains. I think when you're trying to kind of set up their world and the idea that they're hunted for being different, starting this series with the Sentinels, it tells you everything you need to know about, why they're not the Fantastic Four, they're not the Avengers.
Yeah.
These are people who are feared and hated for being different, and
Yeah.
I think the Sentinels are the best version of that, and you can see that. I think we talked last week about the stuff Jonathan Hickman's doing in the comics right now. It's not human versus mutant anymore. It's machine versus mutant is kind of the
Yeah.
fight for the future. So I love that, and I love the Sentinels as villains.
Totally. And it also, for the purposes of the TV show, gives the X-Men something to just go to town on without having to get into too much super violence or gore or whatever. Like they specifically in the second episode, they really tear into a lot of Sentinels, and it's
Mm-hmm.
tons of fun. I mean, look at
Well,
that. That
I can
the
tell you,
head
as someone
popping
who has
off.
dealt with standards and practices a lot, the idea that Wolverine can't kill on this show, so he can only stab robots. It makes perfect sense. Let
Sure.
him shred as many robots as possible.
Before your Marvel stuff, you were on what? American Dad?
American Dad, Community, and it's very interesting to read. They'll send you a whole sheet for your episode of all the things you can't say or do,
Sure.
and you actually get more creative because you have to kind of come up with innuendos and things to kind of get around it, and that's actually funnier usually than maybe the bluer stuff you had written. So, but anyway,
Cool.
I love that they had to find clever ways for Wolverine to kill. So
Yeah.
everyone's a
Um,
robot. He stabs.
Why not? Here we're starting to get introductions to the various X-Men. Beast, who in my rewatch of the show reminds me that he's the coolest, the most interesting. Like I just love Beast, and then of course Morph, who
Yeah.
ah, poor Morph.
Oh, Morph. And we talked about this before, and I was curious if you thought about it all. Like, do you think they wanted Iceman, but they couldn't kill him, so they went with Morph? Do you think they went with a different character because they knew spoiler, he was going to die in this episode?
There is some talk of that in previously on the X-Men. I got a question on Instagram on one of my posts about this, who asked Real quick before I get into that, cameos of Domino and Cannonball and
Oh,
Magneto
I
and Sabretooth in this
love me
scene.
some Sam
So,
Guthrie.
so
Love.
good.
You did. Oh
It
wait, did
was
you know, Ryan, that he's nigh invulnerable when he's blasting? Were
I'm
you aware
not
of that?
invulnerable when I'm blasting, when it's IN apostrophe.
Yeah.
The director of the show made sure those cameos got in. There's
Hmm.
so many nerds worked on this show. But they wanted a character named Changeling for the show. And like
Oh,
that
really?
was essentially they were thinking about Thunderbird and how they would lose a mutant like they did back in the beginning of the all new, all different X-Men, and they didn't want to use Thunderbird, so they wanted someone else, and they ended up landing on a character named Changeling, who is a shapeshifter, but they couldn't use Changeling
Hmm.
for a whole bunch of reasons. Read the book; it's all in there. But they ended up creating Morph for the show,
Hmm.
which ended up being amazing for Marvel because then we got a really great version of Morph who was in comics for years.
In the Age of
Just
Apocalypse. Yeah.
yeah, Age of Apocalypse, and then Exiles after that.
Yeah. No, he's a great character, and I think they took the personality of the animated version and gave it to him in the comics. And I hope he makes it to Krakoa in the future soon because I love that
Ooh, that'd
character.
be cool. The intro of Wolverine is one of my favorite things about this episode. Just like busting through the wall, that pose. And it's like, as a kid, you see a dude in bright colors with arm knives just going to town. It is the best.
Yeah. Well, this whole sequence is brilliant because it's supposed to kind of almost put Jubilee in the perspective of how everyone views mutants. She wakes up in this scary world. There's a guy climbing on the ceiling. There's another guy about to stab the one guy who helped save her. And I love that, it's kind of how we're supposed to see mutants or how the
Yeah.
world sees them. And then, through her time there and kind of us meeting these characters, we realize, oh no, these are the heroes, And I think that's always been the appeal of the X-Men is they're a little more dangerous, they're the outsiders, but when you actually spend time with them, they're this found family, and I think that's the heart
Yeah.
of the X-Men.
Yeah, we're about 12 minutes into this episode, so more than halfway through it. As we
Hmm.
go through, make sure we are going to be going through into episode 2 after a quick break
Hmm.
between episodes where we take some questions, talk a little bit, go through it. I, Storm was always one of my favorite characters. I don't remember
Can we
her
talk
being.
about how Storm rules? Storm
We
is the
should,
best.
because she is one of the greatest comic book characters ever. But like, she's so dramatic in this show, and it
Yeah,
just it could be too much or over the top, but there's something about it that is just so perfect.
I love it. Everything she says is a declaration. Jubilee, get me a soda. Like it's all done that way, and I love it. I love the performance of Storm and that choice because Storm is a very larger than life character. So why
Yeah,
not go for it?
they ended up having three different actors for Storm, I believe, before they landed on the woman who um, is on the versions that we watch now. I think the version that was season 1 that aired was a different actress.
Well, you know my love for Cyclops. He's my number one. But
Yeah.
Storm beat his ass, powerless to win the leadership of the X-Men. That's how much of a badass she is. So you got to give it up to Storm. She is probably maybe behind Kitty the greatest X-Men ever.
Yeah, that's tough. Yeah, I
I
think
don't know how to. I love all my
I wish
babies.
Kitty was in this show.
I know it's hard though because again, like she would be the Jubilee who had graduated, who had moved
Yeah,
on to Excalibur. So it's a hard.
maybe she is, and I don't remember because it's been a while, and I intentionally haven't dug too much further ahead in the
Mhm.
show.
I
Um,
don't think she ever shows up actually.
okay,
Like
well,
like Warlock shows up, but you never see Kitty. But
well,
they
Warlock is
in X-Men Evolution they do a great job, I think, with Kitty.
yes, yeah, they do. That's true. All right, so we get to Jubilee's house. Henry
Mhm.
Peter Gyrick, great, just
Yeah.
weird political slimeball character in the Marvel universe. He's been
Uh,
close to the Avengers. He's had all his dealings with the X-Men. I love that he's used here.
Again, not my joke. It was said on the Jay Miles podcast, but he's the Walter Peck of the Marvel Universe from Ghostbusters.
Oh my
He's like
gosh,
a bureaucrat who is right.
that's
Isn't
so
that when I
perfect.
heard that it blew my mind? I am not stealing
Oh,
that again from Jay Miles. I'm sorry, this is a giant plug for their podcast, but it's a
how's it
great
going down
observation.
there?
Yeah.
Oh man. Uh,
Um, so we get Julie Renway. Terrible foster parents for her. I know you adopted your child.
yep.
Unbelievable, unbelievably bad parents here.
And Jubilee is so good. She's been with them for a year, and she's just like, I gotta go save these people. And even at the end, she's like, after everything that goes down, she's like, I'll see you guys again. I love you. And it's just like, no,
It's
they
like
weren't that great to
they're
you.
terrible. But I feel like that's definitely the template for that scene in I think X2 where they're like, "Have you tried not being a mutant?" It's those kind of parents who just don't get it.
Oh boy. I love the ready room scene here, the X-Men
Mhm.
getting together. Everybody's in their costumes except Wolverine. He's like, I'm not getting dressed up in that stupid outfit again. It smells like garbage. I'm just gonna be here and be really cool right now in my bomber jacket.
And go mess up Cyclops' car, or is that later? I can't. Oh, that's the second
That's
episode. I'm
episode
jumping
two.
ahead. I'm sorry, folks. It's all
It's okay.
I have it out of order. But okay. In defense of Cyclops,
Yes.
which I feel
Okay.
like I need to step him do. He was a little bit of a Boy Scout, a little whiny on the show, a little kind of screaming Gene all the time. But in the comics, I think he is the greatest character in the history of fiction. He's my favorite.
In the
Uh,
history of fiction.
he's my favorite, in my opinion.
Wow.
In my opinion,
Wow.
if you read his arc in the comics, he goes
Yeah.
from being kind of, the first pupil to the, heir of the X-Men. He's going to lead them. He's going to push Xavier's dream forward. Then he becomes almost militant, kills his father figure, and becomes a revolutionary. Splits with Wolverine. They have their big fight, and then almost becomes a villain, but he always makes the hard decisions. He doesn't get to be the fun rebel like Wolverine. I think the beauty of Cyclops is he makes the decisions that are necessary, and
Yeah.
that's what makes him the great leader. So anyway, I'll get off my Cyclops stance, but I love him. He's amazing. Read the
Yeah, he's
comics.
great.
Don't judge
Yeah,
him from the
it's fine.
show. Is my point.
I want to make sure we don't skip past this. I love this bit of exposition by Rogue. She's just like, when I was a kid, I was 13 and kissed this boy and this whole thing, and then Beast just sort of like brushes off like, well, I had dandruff. It's
Yeah.
terrific.
This is the best
Like,
Beast, I think. I love this Beast
he's
so much.
fantastic. He's so good.
Uh, and then
We only have a
by
couple
the way,
minutes left in
everyone's
this episode. Just want to say real quick, just a couple minutes left in this episode. Quick pause between episodes. Then we're going to go to episode 102. So please keep on sticking around.
and some people will say like, oh, Rogue's accent's a little thick, Gambit's accent's a little thick. If you read the Claremont comics, they're written that way. This is a
Yeah,
very literal adaptation of the way these characters were written for years. So I love it. I love Remy and his Thieves Guild and all that stuff.
oh,
It's great.
the Thieves Guild. Damn it. I love Wolverine here, who is like, I don't know, 400 pounds, give or take. There's motorcycles outside my house right now. If you can hear them, great. He's like 400 pounds, bones of metal, like all this stuff. He is so soft, and he's giving them hell for making all the noise in the grass. It's the little bits about this show that continue to delight me.
And this vocal performance for Wolverine, to me, it's a definitive Wolverine. Like, okay, I love Hugh Jackman. I cry at the end of Logan every time I watch it.
Sure.
This is still my favorite Wolverine. I'm sorry.
Cal Dodd, who plays Wolverine, is on Twitter, and he's been jumping in with the tweet-alongs with the X-Men the Animated Series folks who are doing it with us on Twitter. And he posted a video today talking about how he was doing it, and he was wearing Wolverine claws like this. And at the end, for like the
Okay.
last 2 seconds, he does the voice and pops the claws, and I just lost it.
It's
It's
amazing.
fantastic. Yeah.
They nailed it. And I think, credit to the casting director for the show. The
Oh yeah.
voices were so perfect. There was not a
Yep.
single kind of miscast character, and I think it's like it was somehow they captured the voices you heard reading these comics for years, in the
Yeah.
show. So,
They went
uh,
through a lot actually to get the voices the way they wanted them. The first 2 episodes were recorded 4 times to get the right
really,
mix of what they wanted. 4 times, which, you know, great. 30 years later, we're still talking about it, so it all worked out.
yeah,
Oh, Jordan, I got to make sure I drop the little info in here because of Beast's little poem. The book previously on X-Men includes Beast's poetry whenever he drops it, because that was a fun thing that the writers like to do.
hmm,
So the poem that he recites there is a farewell by Coventry Patmore. Coventry
okay.
Patmore, a very minor poet, as Beast says.
We were being educated, and we had no idea while we were eating our cereal and watching this
Well,
every
seriously,
week.
there's like that's the great thing about comics and great cartoons, right?
Yeah.
It's when you're young and you're watching these,
Mhm.
your vocabulary grows, your sense of different things sort of expands just by the nature of all this coming together.
Here's this. I love this CG ending they used to do all the
Oh,
time. Or I don't know if it's
oof.
like the Cerebro files or whatever. I love it. I was like, get me these toys. And I think something we haven't talked about was how there's like this perfect storm of the toy. We should pause, right? Let me know when you're
Well,
pausing
yeah.
here.
Make sure it doesn't go to episode 2 because we're going to be doing a little bit. See
Okay,
if we have any questions that
I think
came
I'm
in.
good. How there was this perfect storm of toys, Pizza Hut stuff, the comics, and it all tied together. You would read about a character, like this guy here, huh? Like Tusk, right? Would show up in the comics, and
Yeah.
then all of a sudden, a week later, he would be on the show, and then, sorry, a few weeks after that, his toy would be available, and there was like, you know, the synergy of what was happening back then was unbelievable. As a fan, that it was all available to you. You could find anything that you were looking for.
Tusk, one of Apocalypse's Dark Riders. Yes.
Yeah, he's actually an Inhuman, but we'll let that go. But
Ooh.
sorry, I'll throw the Inhuman hate out there. But I wanted to kind of show you because I have a few of them here. Leading up to this, again, if you were an X-Men fan, maybe you saw the cartoon, the Pride of the X-Men. Maybe you had played the video game, and that was it. There wasn't in the comic, and there wasn't much available. Like these were the toys available at the time, and they were just these kind of PVC. You couldn't really play with them, and then all of a
Yeah.
sudden, you get X-Men #1, you get the TV show, you get books like adaptations, and then the toys become like this, where they have these action figures and they're fully articulated, and you get McDonald's tie-ins. I'm just showing off right now. I have a lot of X-Men
Yeah.
stuff,
Yeah.
but it was to me, it was just like it was the best time to be an X-Men fan, and I think so much of that is because of the show.
Yes, agreed. Like even the X-Men beat 'em up game in the arcades, the one that everybody loves, the Konami game, had so many players. That is more closely aligned with Pride of the X-Men than it
Right.
is with this show. With this show, we ended up getting like the Sega Genesis game and the games that were on
The
Genesis and
hardest
Super
game of all
Nintendo.
time. That game is
Oh my
impossible.
gosh,
Do you
it's
know that there's a
wild.
level? I've never gotten there because the game is so hard, but apparently when you get to the Mojo level, you're supposed
Yeah,
to hit the reset button or you can't move forward. Something like that. There's something where
that's some
it's like
Eternal Darkness nonsense right there. We
apparently
do
it's
have a
real.
question in here, Jordan.
Oh yeah.
There's a question. The question is, what's the difference between superpowers and mutant powers?
Um, Superpowers you often acquire through an accident. Should it be a radioactive spider, cosmic rays, a super soldier serum? Whereas mutant powers you are born with, it's in your DNA, and usually it activates around your teenage years. Or if you're the
Yeah,
multiple
well,
again, you're slapped on the butt as a child.
yeah. And it specifically, you have a specific gene. You have the mutant gene, the X gene, that is what gives you. Because there are certain people that are born with superpowers. They're born with powers. They're like, as Lady Gaga said, they're born this way, but they are not necessarily mutants unless they have that mutant gene. So that was a great question. Whomever
And
asked it, thank you
generally,
for that.
they're feared and hated versus being
Yeah.
like celebrities like the Fantastic Four.
I know, right? It's what a
It's rough.
world. Then we have one more question before we get into episode two. Why don't we think Kitty and Lockheed actually were in this show?
I think it's the Jubilee thing. I think they fill a similar place in that they're kind of the new kid. They're the one that Wolverine kind of takes up and mentors. And I think at the time this show was made, Kitty was off in England, on Excalibur. Again, if you haven't read that book, unbelievable stuff by Chris Claremont and Alan Davis. But I think she just wasn't as tied to the X community, and I think this is so much of this is based off of what was going on in that Mutant Genesis relaunch with X-Men and Uncanny with the gold and blue team. So they took the blue team basically, and that was the cast of the show.
Yeah, yeah, and exactly what you said. This was the show was really closely developed between the studio making it and Marvel and a bunch of other people. So Marvel was like, use these characters. Here's good, and like they all sort of came together. So hopefully that answers your question, nameless person.
Also, Jubilee
Before
rules. I mean, so does
she
Kitty,
does,
but
she does.
Jubilee epitomizes the '90s.
And she's our, as some you and I growing up reading X-Men in the 90s as like our current X-Men, she was our POV character, whereas someone in the 80s had Kitty as their POV character. And it's I'm sure everybody will have their own. I mean, I think some people like Glob Herman these days or some
Love
other
Glob.
characters. Yeah, Glob is so good. There's a bunch of great characters, no matter what generation of X-Men reader you are.
Ryan, can I ask you a
Okay,
question? Being a
please.
Jubilee fan, did you
Yep.
watch the Generation X special? And can we do one of those? I would love
I
to come
don't
on
think
and
it's on
talk through
Disney
that one.
Plus yet.
Okay, I hope it
Uh,
hits soon because if you haven't seen that one, it's pretty special.
I don't think I've ever seen it. I just recently watched the Power Pack pilot that
Oh, I
didn't
haven't
go to
seen that.
series. It's actually pretty solid, and it it even has some comics in it, like in a drawer. It's a lot of fun. But we're not here to talk about that. If you are just
Yeah.
joining us here on the live stream, we are doing a watch along for the first two episodes of X-Men, the animated series, the 90s X-Men series that we all love. We're hopefully going to give you guys and gals watching some new information, some perspectives, some fun banter, and all that good stuff. So we're going to be going into episode two really shortly. If you haven't queued it up yet, get your Disney Plus loaded up, have it ready, get ready because we are going to dive into episode two, which is Night of the Sentinels, part two. Jordan, are you
Yeah,
ready?
I'm so ready for this.
Okay,
We ended on
we'll
a
do it again.
cliffhanger. Let's do
I
it.
know. We'll do it at three, two, one, go. So, three, two, one, go.
And this
When
begins
I
with
was,
a previously
it
on X
doesn't.
Men, which is
It
like ingrained in
doesn't.
my brain forever. It doesn't?
That's the thing though. It doesn't begin with it. We have our audio off, so we can't hear it. But it doesn't. I thought it was going to when I had first rewatched it, but because these were put, they premiered the same time. It was the premiere of the show was October 31st, 1992. It was in prime time, so they were back to back,
Mhm.
and they didn't have the previously on. They do have it for episode three and going forward, but I was like ready for it and it wasn't
Yeah.
there.
I love that guy's voice how that used to say previously on X Men. So what are you looking
Yeah.
at right now? Let's make sure I'm synced with you.
I've got Beast. Then it's just like the recap of the episode.
Okay.
Storm, saying, "Oh, we didn't even get to the Charles Xavier of it all, who's like the egomaniac who puts children into danger and
Yeah.
then names
He
the
makes
team
children
after himself."
soldiers. Yeah. Uh,
I got
I
issues.
think '90s Xavier, his heart is in the right place. Sure, he's made some mistakes. He's helped usher in Onslaught. We all want to move past Onslaught, but in this series, I think he's portrayed as this very loving father figure, and I think
Yeah.
what's interesting about Xavier, he's a very flawed mentor, especially in the comic books.
Fair enough. True, 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 true. We are again in the credits for the first episode because it is X-Men the animated series. We never skip the credits, or the intro, I should say, because it's the best song, even though we can't hear it right now because we are muted. Hopefully, you watching along. I hope you're singing along. I hope you are. I know Jordan White, who is the editor of our
I love
X-Men
Jordan.
comics. He can play the theme song on the ukulele. I've seen him do it
Oh,
at a panel at a comic convention before,
yeah.
so it's great.
Also, shout
Uh,
out to Jordan and every writer and artist in the X-Men line right now. The comics have never been better. If you're looking for a place to jump back into X-Men, if maybe you watch the show, now it's all on the Marvel app right now, Marvel Unlimited. They just started loading it. The Donna X stuff, get in. It hasn't been this good in years. It's amazing. So
yeah, I
shout out to
will
Jordan.
Venmo you $5 for the Marvel Unlimited plug. Thank you for that.
I'll plug it all day, baby.
I know. Yeah, there is a great thing we didn't mention in the first time we saw the intro, but I believe it was Eric Lewald who is the showrunner, or it was Larry who is the director. In the, I think it's in the intro, Gambit has one card where one of his spades is upside down.
Oh, really? Never
Yeah.
noticed that.
It's just one of those little tiny things that goes by so quickly you wouldn't even notice. So after all the recap and all the stuff, now we get back into real time, and I love Wolverine smelling the gun oil.
Yeah. This is a good Wolverine. As much as I'm hating on Wolverine and pushing
Yeah,
my guy Cyclops, this is a great version of Wolverine. I think there is no X-Men without Wolverine. You know, I personally like the Wolverine that's kind of part of the team versus the focus. But I think they do a really good job of how they work him into the team dynamic. I love the back and forth with him and Cyclops. I use that GIF all the time of him punching Cyclops in the gut. It's
because it's
fantastic.
great. Yeah,
It's
we're gonna
great.
get we're gonna get to that scene in real time
Yes.
soon. Oh, this bit right here, I cracked up with because Morph pretends to be this like this command guy at the Mutant Control Agency, and his voice is out of this world. The voice he puts on, you would think one of the soldiers was like, "Are you okay? You don't sound right." But it's fantastic.
Did you have the morph toy?
I did not.
I
We
had
didn't
him,
have a lot of
and
fun growing up, so I only had a couple of them.
you could take his head off and change it. It was fantastic. So you could make him
So good.
Wolverine. You could make him Cyclops.
That's right.
I love Morph. At first I was like, who's this guy? I don't know this guy, and then I was completely won over. And then when he comes back as Dark Morph, the best.
Oh man, spoilers on that
Spoiler.
one, kid.
Spoiler.
Um, I love Beast is like do 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 do. There's a whole bunch of names that go by really quickly. We see them again later. I don't know that any of those names are mutants that we know of. I tried to look it up real quick, but I didn't see
Uh,
anything. And then we shift over really quickly to Detroit, where they are torturing a child. Like that is a great way to get your villains. Like, oh, these people are scum.
yeah, the Trasks and the Gyriches,
Yep,
not great.
just the worst. She's like, I
But
can't help the way
again,
I
the
was
Gyrich
born.
worked with the Avengers, which is so crazy. But
I
they hated him too.
Yeah, I
Not
mean, he was
they weren't
just a
a fan.
government stooge.
Now, do you
There's no
know
Del Ruska.
that Jim Lee based a lot of the visuals of Jubilee off of? Oh no, Silvestri created her, but when Jim Lee drew her, I believe he used a lot of Robin colors. That she
Hmm.
originally had green pants and stuff. So
Huh.
that's kind of a weird homage. I remember.
Like the bird, like Robin the bird. Interesting.
Right,
Let
not
me look.
DC. I would never
I
bring
don't
them
know what
up
that
in
means.
the podcast.
I don't know what you're talking about. You asked to come back on. You're like, I'll be on every episode. Here you are dropping those guys in our stream. You're on
Okay.
the
To
YouTube and Facebook.
be
How
fair,
dare?
I don't know if you read that Marvel Year in Review also brought it up, which was a published Marvel Time magazine sized comic they used to do. So that's where I
Uh,
got my facts from.
I'll let it stand.
All right. Well,
There's
let me
true
ask you this: did
bits.
you go to Pizza Hut and did you get the X-Men comics and the VHSs?
Pizza Hut? Look, I grew up in New York. We had real pizza. We didn't need to go to Pizza Hut. Get
Yeah,
out of here.
I didn't eat there either. I grew up in New York as well. I'm with you. But I sought it out. There's two times in my life I sought out Pizza Hut. One, to get those Land Before Time little puppet things, and two, to get my X-Men stuff. And you could get the VHSs, which had not only these episodes, but they would have interviews with Scott Lobdell and Fabian Nicieza, and I think Stan Lee was hosting them. who so there was all the writers, and I believe they had some artists on, and then also you would get these comics that came with them, and one I think was just Cyclops versus the internet. He hated the internet. That was a whole issue. It was great.
I
If you're
mean,
a
that
real
seems like
character, you
it
own that.
would still be relevant to this day.
Yeah, he was not a fan.
I can understand fully. I really dig the shot of Rogue taking the soldier, flying him up, the way they like do the cinematography of it, of flying upside down, following her. I just think it's really cool.
Yeah. I mean, this was such a great period for animation. Because especially on Saturday mornings, right? You had this, and then you had DC's Batman the animated series, and then this. But I just felt like it was they really tried to kind of capture the energy of the comics, and I think it was a very cinematic show for its time.
For sure. I love Wolverine just bowing up to the Sentinel. He's just like, "Oh, I'm gonna fight a giant robot." He makes a Wizard of Oz joke. It's really great. And then, boom, we get this like crazy scene that as kids, no way you could have expected them to actually go to this place.
Yeah, no, and I think that's what they did so well in the show was that, at the end of the day, this is a soap opera and the drama was real and they didn't cut any corners and they played it that way. And I think that's what made so many people engage with the show was that, there were stakes, this character dies, people grieve him in the next episode. And I think, sometimes people make stuff for kids where they kind of underestimate their ability to handle this kind of material. And I think X-Men, kind of approached them, head on and was like, look, this is life, this is what happens. So I just remember loving this because that's what I loved about the comics was the drama and the soap opera element of it all.
I was letting you talk that out because then now we just got Wolverine just laying it into Cyclops, punching him in the stomach,
Oh,
and literally
yeah.
threatening his life. Next time I use these, like that is murder, and I am ready for
Yeah.
Wolverine to go to that length against Cyclops.
Well, that's how he always was, right? Like I think
Yeah,
the best thing about Wolverine is that he would stab you, your own teammate, when he first appeared, and I think you got this great sense of him finally feeling like he belonged, and he eventually became more of a team player to the point where he, like I was saying, in the comics, you get to the point where Wolverine's running the school and Cyclops is the rogue revolutionary out there being hunted. So they got to switch places in the comics, which I always loved.
yeah. We're over 9 minutes into this episode. Stick with us. We will have some questions after this and answer those. I love Wolf. Here's the thing about Wolverine
The
right now.
convertible line
So
is great, by the
considerate.
way.
He's so considerate. He's like, oh, well, Cyclops wanted a convertible. I'm gonna give my friend a convertible and drive off in my little dune buggy and deal with my problems.
What do you think of the love triangle, the Cyclops Jean Wolverine love triangle? Are you a fan? You don't love it? Where do you
I
land
like the
there?
drama of it all, but I,
Uh,
I think I think it I prefer the Emma Cyclops
love the Emma
love triangle.
relationship.
I think
Yeah,
that part is more for me. I think
yeah,
Wolverine should never know happiness.
yeah.
I think he's you just feel more when he is just being beaten down and again and again and again.
Well, interesting fact about that because it became such a big thing right in the movies. This
Mm.
love triangle was that it wasn't really in the comics until they started doing classic X-Men. And then Chris Claremont used to do these little kind of small stories in the back of these reprints that would fill in gaps that happened in the issues. And that's where that got introduced. So it was kind of retconned in to being
I
a part of
love
the
the
lore.
stories. There's some really
So
great
good.
stuff, and they're up on Marvel Unlimited. A lot of them, like
Yes.
they fill in a lot of stuff for like Dark Phoenix saga, and they have amazing art by like John Bolton and other creators.
Mm.
Yeah, it's really good stuff. So
If you're an
now
X-Men
we're
fan,
in,
it's great stuff. Yeah.
yeah, now we're in the scene where we're getting the flashback of what happened to Morph. And I will say, in my rewatch, Cyclops is pretty great here. Like I get what he's doing, but he is just going after all these Sentinels. He's doing the best he can. Obviously, he's Cyclops, so his best is not great. So
Well,
he and Storm have to bounce out.
to be fair, Cyclops makes the hard decisions, not the popular decisions, and that is a true leader.
Yeah, yeah. So two of your friends may be killed You're gonna leave him there?
He's looking out for mutant kind. He's looking out for the team. It's about how to get everyone out alive versus sacrificing more lives. You know what? I'm not here to defend Cyclops. He's the greatest.
You
That's it.
literally said you are here to defend Cyclops multiple times in either text or other calls with me.
All
But
right.
one of the
Well,
things I
what's
like really
okay?
quickly here
I know you're a
is,
Wolverine
hold
guy.
on.
What's Wolverine?
But one of the things I love before we go too far
Sorry.
past it is Wolverine calling Cyclops Junior, and it's just a simple. It's again another one of those simple things, but reminds you that like there's
He's
so
100
many
years old.
layers to these characters, and
Yeah.
you don't even like we don't even get to dig into them yet.
Wolverine's old. He's real old.
Yeah, he's seen some
And
stuff, man.
technically, Cyclops is not Junior because he is not a space pirate, which is what his dad is. Go read the comics. Corsair rules.
That is like, is your arm hurt? Because that was a reach, my friend. Uh, we're back over here. We're seeing the Mutant Control Agency. We're getting to see. I love this weird bit with the Sentinels and the human, and like that effect, that like prismatic rainbow effect. Everybody cries in this episode. That was the thing that I
Well,
remembered. Is
it's
like
kind of teaming
everybody's
up,
sad.
right? The Sentinels aren't reliable. They're going to turn
No,
on humankind eventually,
yeah,
which I
they're
love.
they're
Is
crappy tech.
that yeah, that humans built these weapons to protect them, and that actually the Sentinels are way more dangerous than
Yeah.
the mutants themselves. And
Um,
I can't believe
this part.
Beast sidelined for the whole season. Insane.
Yeah, it's nuts. It bums me out. I forget about that. Now we get to meet the president of the United States, first female president. She's here. She's in this show. I love this. I marked out for this so hard when this popped up, because especially in her other when she shows up later in the episode, she's just like doing her stairmaster, and she's like, "Gyrick, you
I
suck.
love
Get
that.
out." Boom. She's so good.
But yeah, they
The
also set up
voices.
Senator Kelly in a great way as a villain
Yeah.
too. You know
Yeah.
that humankind could be kind of personified in this one politician who's like, I represent the people. I think these people are dangerous, and we need to solve this. And I think they do a good job of not making him your typical kind of mustache twirling villain. He's a guy who's nervous and scared, and is trying to kind of fix the problem.
Yeah. Look at Wolverine. I go where I want to go. He's dope. Poor Cyclops is like, please don't hit my glasses.
Oh,
And then
come on. Because he could destroy the bar. He's so powerful. See? There
the,
goes
the
that table.
the biker performances there, I love so much. There's just like I don't know who those actors were who played them, but those bits were really really good. A
I
lot of
also
fun.
think this Jeep, they put some missiles on it and they sold it as a toy. That's how iconic it
Hell
is.
yeah, they did.
Yeah.
We got to ask Jesse Falcon, who has worked at Toy Biz since 19.
Yeah.
He started at Toy Biz in 1994. He probably knows about any of the toys.
Jesse is the
Um,
best.
yeah,
He has changed my son's life by sending us some Marvel Legends that blew his mind, a whole box of them.
that's great.
Shout out to Jesse. But yeah, here, Stairmaster wearing what looks to be like a Bruce Lee kind of yellow kind of getup, but I
If
love the
you're the
president.
president, wouldn't you be like, all right, get me a closet full of Bruce Lee outfits? That's what I want as my presidential wardrobe. Why not? This part here, Gyrick gets so pissed, and then he throws the papers on the ground. Who's gonna clean that up? You are, you dingbat. Like we don't see the scene, but he's probably like, ugh, he like slumps shoulders, picks up
I
the
like to think
paper.
there's an assistant off camera who's just like shuffling them all together. But
No, he just got canned. He's got no help. The assistant is like, screw you, brother. Um,
Cyclops reaching out to the family, trying to
yep,
explain
yep.
the situation.
We have about less than 6 minutes in this episode. Stick around towards the end. We'll have questions and some wrap up thoughts and tell you about what we're going to do for episode 3 and all this stuff. This this bit and the other bit with the foster parents turned me around on them a little bit in my rewatch. Not fully, but it's like they're scared, they're
Yeah.
dumb. It is what it is.
Well, I think that's the most believable thing, in the Marvel in the Marvel universe is that like there are people who can control all metal. There are people who can blast holes with their eye beams, and that's the idea that they're not trained, they don't have the technology like Cyclops does to control this. They are dangerous, so you believe the fear. I think, and I think that's what makes X-Men work. Is that yes, there are bigots who chase these people down with pitchforks, chasing Nightcrawler all around. But at the end of the day, these are human beings, and they're learning. And Xavier opens up the school to help them learn how to use these abilities. And I think that's why I love X-Men. It's these outsiders who find a family.
Yeah. Speaking of those outsiders, they follow along the Sentinel, which they've like knocked his arm off. The Sentinel flies away. They're tailing the Sentinel by like 50 feet. Like they're in a
Mhm.
giant jet, and you would think the Sentinel would have some sort of guidance warning system, be like, "Oh, I'm being trailed. I should, try to kill them." I love cartoons. I love comics. We can get past all this.
Never bothered me, but I see your point.
It's when you watch these shows a
Yeah.
lot, you pick up little things in your older age. And also, I absolutely love the way the Sentinel falls. I think it's
Yeah.
one of the best bits of
Clumsy as
little
hell.
comedy. Yeah.
And here comes the big Jubilee rescue, which I love.
What are the cool? I mean, we've talked a bunch about Jubilee through the first episode and this one. When she like really focuses her powers and she can use them offensively, and they're more than just like sparklers or
Yeah.
fireworks. She's awesome. She's so cool.
Well, she has some great teachers because after she graduates the X-Men, goes to the Massachusetts Academy, gets taught by Banshee and Emma, joins Generation X, and then, becomes a vampire, adopts a child. I think like Jubilee's had a really interesting arc where she went from being this teen hero to, really growing up and kind of stepping up to teach the next generation of mutants in the last Generation X story.
Yeah. One of the cool things about this first season, and I think it's a short season. I think it's only 13 episodes long. It's there's lots of little bits and pieces. Each episode has its own story, but the overarching Sentinel of it all is really great, and how they bring it back throughout.
Oh, you get to Master Mold,
Yeah.
who again, not my joke, J. Miles, poops out Sentinels.
Hmm,
That's his power.
it's pretty good.
He makes
Yeah.
Sentinels. Yeah.
I also love that we see the X-Men get like essentially torn apart by the Sentinels previously, and now when they're focused, when they're working together, when they are prepared, they are a force. Especially, Storm. I summon the power of
Well,
thunder and lightning.
the last time they were shopping at the mall, they weren't in their costumes. You got to cut them a little slack.
You
They're
gotta
caught
be
up.
prepared at any time, Jordan.
Yes. And by the way, Rogue is so good in this show.
Oh man. The voice actor for Rogue, she's a politician in Canada now,
Really?
and she's fantastic. And she was on Twitter like tweeting in Rogue's like speech cadence and dialect, and it was tremendous.
That's amazing. Well, I
She's
mean,
great.
I think, and this is a lot to Chris Claremont's credit, the best X-Men are women. And I think this show did a great job of really balancing out the cast gender-wise. And I think this was such an entry point to so many young readers, especially female readers, growing up, people who had never read comics suddenly were pulled in because of the show. And I think because of the female representation of the show.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
uh,
And
props to
one
them.
of the females has one of the greatest lines in the show. Does a mall baby eat chili fries? That is right there. It is maybe one of the
The
greatest
best.
lines in any bit of fiction. I'll put it out there.
Also, this show has seeing Jean again. Uh, it's the best adaptation of the Dark Phoenix saga of all time. Let's be honest.
All right, all
This
right,
does
all right.
better.
We're gonna get to it. We'll get to it at
Okay.
some point.
Eventually,
And
but
that
I'm just saying, seeing Jean, they nail it.
yes, that ends the first two episodes of X-Men the animated series. Remember, stick around. We're gonna answer some questions. But you could also just keep the show going if you're watching on Disney Plus while we talk. We'll get
Watch
into
more.
that. Let's see. What's that?
Watch more. It's great. It's a great
Yeah.
show. But or
Let's see.
or listen to us.
We actually got questions about some stuff that we've been showing off. The question came in and says, "That mug is so cool. Where did you get it?" And I think it could go for either of us. Jordan, where'd you
Okay.
get your mug?
Well, this is Mondo makes this, and they have two versions. You have the other version. I do not have it behind you. So you know, we were kind of we were aware of it when we were writing the show, and they've been very kind. They sent us some extra mugs for some of the writers on M.O.D.O.K, and it's beautiful. It's a beautiful tiki mug. And then the one you have is very hard to find. I also have it as well in my little M.O.D.O.K collection. But it's was that Think Geek maybe?
It was from ThinkGeek. I bought three
Yeah.
of them when they came out just to be safe. One of mine broke in the office. Someone else in the office gave me a replacement one recently. So thank you to them. But I have two here at home just in case,
So
because as you say,
these
it's hard
you
to
can get
find.
on Mondo, and the one you have, I think you have to go on eBay and track it down because they don't make them anymore, but they're great.
This is true. All right, we got another question here. What are our opinions of the show's direction of Rogue versus in the comics?
I thought they nailed her. I think it's one of the best translations of the character. I think they make her very complex. I think they nailed the, you know, I want to develop a relationship with Remy, but if I touch him, I can kill him. So I'm a little more withdrawn. I think Rogue is one of the best X-Men, and I think they showcase her so well on the show.
Yeah. I want to answer that question after I rewatch more episodes because it's been a while since I've seen a lot of these and see how she develops. But she always has like such a fond place in my memory from both the show and of course the amazing comics. So I think my memory says she's great, but I want to watch it again and
Yeah.
see
And
like
she
choose
gets to
her.
be the big bruiser of the show. I love that.
Yeah.
Like you don't have
Heck yeah.
Colossus, you don't have any, so it's like Rogue is the muscle of the show, and I love that.
Yeah, definitely. All right, looks like final question. What Marvel comic, past or present, would we have loved to have seen get the X-Men the animated series treatment? So, same animation, presentation, dedication to adaptation.
Okay, this is going to be a long answer, so I apologize in advance. Executioner Song was the comic that came out during the height of the X Men animated series. It brought everyone together, old New Mutants who are now on X Force, X Factor, both gold, blue teams, Apocalypse, Sinister. It's what Ryan's reading right now, and it was everything, right? It was Strife, Sinister, Apocalypse. It was every character you could imagine, kind of thrown into this amazing story. So I love that. It's the most '90s story. Second, I would go with uh, Chad Bowers, Chris Sims. It did an X Men '92 series during
Mm,
uh,
Secret War.
Secret Wars, and it was incredible. It was a continue. It felt like a continuation of the anime series without actually being one. So that would be another one I would say to check out, and I wish they would have adapted that because it felt like more episodes of the show. And Age of Apocalypse, I would have killed for Age of Apocalypse.
So
Ryan, how about you?
there's some stuff about Age of Apocalypse I think bled into the comics and the show in a little bit, but I would go with a weird pick and say Defenders. Like give me 70s Defenders and all its weird nonsense glory. Start with like the core four. So I get some Namor, and then let
Yeah.
it go real weird to by the end where you got Cloud, you got Gargoyle, you got Valkyrie, you got
So you want
like
like Angel and Beast spin-off or Iceman and Beast? Who was on that team? It was
that's
Iceman and
champion.
Angel, right?
Iceman and Angel are the champions. The
Yeah.
LA
Oh, right. Who's on Defenders?
Defenders
Beast and
was Hulk, Namor, Silver Surfer, Doctor Strange, and then the team like the team that's not a team, and then they go on and they get like really weird group of characters together. I think that would be super fun.
Yeah, but I didn't believe Beast. No, Beast and Angel
Beast,
joined the Defenders, if I'm correct.
yeah, I think they might have at one point.
So there's your tie.
But I just
Yeah,
want Cloud. All I care about is Cloud. Cloud,
Cloud is
great
very
character.
cool. Yeah,
Cloud's
very
very
cool.
cool. That is about to wrap it up. I just want to remind everybody who's watching, come back next week, next Friday, 8 p.m. Eastern for another watch along. We're gonna watch episode 3 of X-Men the Animated Series, which is called Enter Magneto, which I'm super excited for. I already have my T-shirt ready for
I love that
that
Magneto.
episode. So good. And Jordan, where can fans who are watching, follow you on social media?
On Twitter, I am at Bloom Jordan, and then same thing on Instagram. And then yeah, we'll be able to share some M.O.D.O.K stuff hopefully soon. But thank you for listening to me babble on about the X-Men. I love the X-Men. My first love.
Yeah, indeed. Jordan, thank you. Thanks everybody for watching, and we'll see you soon. Remember, Jordan, you've got to wait for 10 seconds.
I'm gonna wave. Here's my wave.
Bye, everybody.
Bye. Thank you for tuning in.